Tom Cameron Frazier.
Red Huntley.
David Benson. John Chandler.
Tom Brokaw.
Zarqawi has been killed. Iraq's most wanted terrorist, killed in a U.S. airstrike. Tonight, how he was found, how the operation was carried out, and how the world is reacting. The president calls the death a severe blow, but warns the insurgency will go on. The Al-Qaeda connection, Zarqawi's complicated, sometimes competitive relationship with Osama bin Laden. Homefront High, an American high school where the war in Iraq is more than just stories on television. And cancer vaccine, a big breakthrough in women's health. The FDA gives final approval to a vaccine that prevents cervical cancer.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. It was dinner time in Iraq. 2 American F-16 pilots were given a very specific target, a house in the middle of a grove of orange and date trees. Minutes later, 2 500-pound bombs were dropped on the target. Inside that house, about an hour outside of Baghdad, the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, could not have known that he had just drawn his last breath. The first word to the White House yesterday afternoon was they thought they got him. Then it was confirmed. Today, the U.S. allowed the Iraqi prime minister to break this news to the world. A giant framed picture of the dead terrorist was shown, and tonight, a huge question remains. Does this amount to the death of one man, a sworn enemy of the United States, or is it a game changer for the United States effort in Iraq? Tonight, NBC News has correspondents from Jordan to Washington, including 3 veteran war correspondents in Baghdad on this story, on this violent death of a violent man. And now, what comes next? We begin our reporting tonight with NBC's Richard Engel in Baghdad. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. It all began for us this morning with a rare early morning phone call. We were told we had to immediately, urgently go to a press conference at the Iraqi Prime Minister's residence. When we got there, we saw the Prime Minister flanked by the U.S. ambassador and the top American general here, and we knew something big had happened.
2 U.S. F-16 jets on patrol over Iraq like these were scrambled last evening as part of an intense 6-week manhunt for Iraq's most wanted terrorist. U.S. military officials tell NBC News the jets were tracking Zarqawi's top deputy, Abu Abdelrahman, as he headed to a meeting with Zarqawi in this isolated 2-story farmhouse 40 miles north of Baghdad. When U.S. Special Forces confirmed Zarqawi was inside, they fired 2 500-pound bombs. U.S. military officials who swept the area after the attack say Zarqawi, Rahman, and 4 others were killed instantly.
We have been able to identify al-Zarqawi through fingerprint verification, facial recognition, and known scars.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Today, in a carefully choreographed presentation,
اليوم لقد تم القضاء على الزرقاوي.
the new Iraqi prime minister made the announcement of Zarqawi's death.
This is a picture of Zarqawi.
The U.S. military then displayed photographs of Zarqawi taken after blood and dirt were wiped off his face to make him recognizable. Zarqawi, known for disguising his appearance, had eluded capture several times, despite a $25 million bounty on his head. U.S. officials accused the Jordanian-born militant of carrying out a 3-year jihad of car bombings, kidnappings, and executions that left thousands here dead.
Over the last several years, no single person on this planet has had the blood of more innocent men, women, and children on his hands.
Zarqawi was savagely brutal. He personally beheaded American hostage Nick Berg. At the time, he taunted President Bush. "You love life as much as my fighters love death," he said. So how did the U.S. pick up Zarqawi's trail? U.S. military officials say an informant within al-Qaeda in Iraq, his own organization, turned on him and told U.S. Special Forces how to track his deputy, Rahman. The 2 men met frequently, a pattern U.S. forces were able to exploit.
U.S. officials say they found a treasure trove of intelligence at Zarqawi's safe house, which they have already used to launch at least 17 raids against al-Qaeda militants in and around Baghdad. Brian?
Thanks, Richard, for your reporting on the story all day long. Richard Engel in Baghdad tonight. Now to the big question of how Zarqawi's death will affect the overall insurgency in Iraq. NBC's Jim Masada has more on that tonight from Baghdad.
This was the reality of Iraq after Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Another wave of roadside and car bombs struck across Baghdad, killing at least 31 today. And while U.S. officials and Iraqi analysts tell NBC News that Zarqawi's death is a blow to al-Qaeda in Iraq, the organization, with hundreds of loyal fighters, is capable of coming back.
This incident might set them back a week or so, but they will regroup and reorganize soon.
Zarqawi was brilliant at spectacular attacks. When he targeted one of the holiest Shiite shrines in Samarra, or turned downtown Karbala, a holy city, into a firestorm, killing dozens, he inspired foreign fighters to join his holy war. But in the end, analysts say, his indiscriminate brutality alienated fellow Sunnis and other insurgent groups not interested in jihad, but in resisting U.S. military presence here. It's those fighters, homegrown, perhaps 15,000 strong, who are the face of today's insurgency.
The majority of them now are Iraqi Sunni Arabs. They're not foreigners. What we're still dealing with is a low-grade civil war with sectarian violence.
Some 6,000 Iraqi bodies have ended up in Baghdad's morgue in the past 5 months alone, victims of armed Sunni gangs and Shiite militias. Critics say it's now up to Iraq's Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, to end the violence. And he took a step forward today by filling the top security posts in his cabinet. Jim Masada, NBC News, Baghdad.
This death leaves a power vacuum in al-Qaeda's Iraq operation. As we mentioned, for more on that, we go to the third of our Baghdad-based correspondents tonight, NBC's Mike Betcher. And Mike, what might the future hold here, and what was the reaction on the street there today?
Well, on the streets, Brian, it was pretty muted. The people did not believe that the death of one man would make a difference, although there were celebrations by police, most of them Shiite, but they want to see the proof that something is going to happen here to secure the situation. Things have been bad. They've gotten worse over the past few months, and they don't believe that the death of one man, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, is going to change that.
And Mike, what about the next generation?
Well, there's going to be a competition. I've been talking to Arab intelligence sources, and they tell me that they believe that the next leader will be from Iraq, although U.S. officials are talking about a man from Egypt, but we'll have to see. But Osama bin Laden himself had said 2 years ago, according to my sources, that he wanted to see an Iraqi take charge of this.
Thanks, Mike. After a long day there in Iraq, NBC's Mike Betcher rounding out our correspondents tonight in Baghdad. Now to the Pentagon and more detail on this special forces team that's been tracking Zarqawi for well over a year. NBC's Jim Miklashevsky on duty there with that. Jim, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. It's Task Force 145, an elite group of Special Forces commandos whose primary mission has been to get Zarqawi. In the past year, they've killed or captured more than 220 al-Qaeda operatives, doggedly collected intelligence, and came close to Zarqawi at least 3 times. U.S. officials tell NBC News they caught a break this week when intelligence intercepted critical al-Qaeda phone calls and Zarqawi's spiritual leader led U.S. forces directly to Zarqawi. The mission now for Task Force 145, destroy al-Qaeda in Iraq. Brian?
Jim Miklashevsky at the Pentagon tonight. And while the death of Zarqawi was the best news out of Iraq for this White House in months, the reaction from the president on down seemed today designed not to raise public expectations about the future of this war in Iraq. Our chief White House correspondent, David Gregory, is with us from there tonight. David.
And Brian, 10 hours after the president got final word of Zarqawi's death, he once again talked to the American people about a turning point, but as you mentioned, not the end of violence in Iraq. In the Rose Garden, the president appeared subdued, even as he described the killing of Zarqawi as a major blow against terrorists in Iraq.
Now Zarqawi has met his end, and this violent man will never murder again.
First reports of Zarqawi's death reached the White House yesterday afternoon about 3:45, when the president was meeting with members of Congress just back from Iraq. Press Secretary Tony Snow recalled the suggestion from one.
That things would be better if somebody would get Zarqawi. There was a little snickering in the room at the time. Little did we know.
An hour later, the news reached the president. Not since the capture of Saddam Hussein in December 2003 has the White House achieved such a victory in Iraq.
It's an opportunity for Iraq's new government to turn the tide of this struggle.
But the president was careful not to overreact.
We can expect the terrorists and insurgents to carry on without him. We can expect the sectarian violence to continue.
With today's news and news that the Iraqi government is now complete with the selection of some key security ministers, the president said today that next week he will convene his war cabinet at Camp David and discuss the way forward now in the war. Brian?
Thanks, David. David Gregory in the White House lawn tonight. And now to the handling of this news by the White House and the politics of all this, after all. From Seattle tonight, our Washington bureau chief, moderator of Meet the Press, Tim Russert. Tim, you and others noticed today the expectations management by the president, by the White House.
Brian, remember when Saddam Hussein was captured, as David referred to, there was a slight bump up for the president in the polls. The thought that was that Iraqis would now step forward, embrace democracy, because they no longer feared retribution by Saddam Hussein. That did not happen. And so the White House realizes that there may be a point or two up in the public opinion polls, but they fully expect more violence to continue and this monster named Al-Qaeda to find a new head. Secondly, Brian, we did not hear the president talk about mission accomplished or bring it on. He realizes this is going to be a long and difficult process. The best the president can do is buy some patience, buy some time from the American people, so that in a month or 2 months or 3 months, sometime before the midterm elections, the Iraqis have trained enough troops to secure the country and bring some American troops home. They realize that and only that will have a real political effect here in the United States.
Tim Russert with us tonight from Seattle. Tim, thank you for that. And while most of the civilized world saw Zarqawi as a grassroots terrorist mastermind, his supporters today praised him as a martyr. And in the Jordanian town he called home, his family mourned him as a hero. NBC News correspondent Martin Fletcher is there.
Zarqawi's family said they knew that sooner or later he'd be killed. Tonight, at the family home in the town of Zarqa, the mourning began. Police barred the press from town, fearing the anger of the Zarqawi tribe. But we got through anyway, and Zarqawi's younger brother didn't object. The sign here says, "The wedding of the martyr." For the people here, Zarqawi is a hero who has gone to paradise. Earlier, Zarqawi's wife and 2 sisters wouldn't talk, but his brother-in-law did. He was Zarqawi's commander. We first met him 2 years ago, after Zarqawi became a top terrorist leader. Then, he proudly showed us Zarqawi's own copy of the Quran with his signature. He told us Zarqawi was taking revenge for American terrorism. Today, he calls Zarqawi the Imam, the spiritual leader of all Muslims. But beyond his hometown, there was a different reaction. Jordanians also remember that Zarqawi killed about 50 of his own countrymen, most of them in 3 almost simultaneous bomb attacks on hotels in the capital last year. He deserved to die, this man says, especially after what he did in Amman. Back at his home tonight, it turned out the police warning of danger was correct. Children chased us away from the mourning tent with stones and rocks, chanting, "God is great." Here at least, Zarqawi is a hero. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Zarqa, Jordan.
We'll take a break in our coverage here when NBC Nightly News continues this Thursday night. NBC News in depth. More on today's military attack and the question, will there be a backlash in another part of the world? And later, an American high school that has seen more than its share of suffering as the war in Iraq goes on. We're back. Our coverage continues with NBC News in depth tonight. With the death of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, attention focuses once again on Osama bin Laden, his relationship with al-Zarqawi, and what happens to al-Qaeda now. One of the questions being asked is what impact is al-Zarqawi's death? What will it have on al-Qaeda's global terror ambitions? More from NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell.
The USS Cole, target of one of al-Qaeda's first attacks on U.S. forces, left Norfolk today for the Middle East. Its first deployment to the region since a terror bomb killed 17 of its crew in Yemen 6 years ago. But since the war in Iraq, U.S. officials say Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, charismatic and with global ambitions, began emerging as a major competitor to al-Qaeda for money and recruits. He seemed to enjoy personally beheading his victims and even attacked Muslim holy sites. Last July, bin Laden's deputy, Ayman al-Zawahiri, wrote to warn Zarqawi that those tactics could cost him public support. Zarqawi ignored the advice. In November, he ordered an attack on 3 hotels in Jordan, including a wedding party, killing more than 60. And in April, showed off on a training video, seeming to imitate bin Laden. He also expanded beyond the Middle East, creating cells in Eastern and Western Europe. The CIA told the Senate tonight to expect more attacks by his followers.
It may actually cause some of Zarqawi's followers to accelerate their plans to carry out attacks as a way of inflicting a price on us for killing him.
But as Zarqawi's operatives scramble to regroup, U.S. officials hope they will fight over how to replace him or make a critical mistake.
Either go on the internet or make a cell phone call that could lead the U.S. to bigger fish, perhaps even bin Laden himself.
The challenge is to find them before they strike again. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
And in the end, military affairs officials confirmed to us a Predator drone, an unmanned spy plane, helped track Zarqawi for the last days of his life until today's hit. We'll take another break here when NBC Nightly News continues in a moment. The other major story of this day, it has to do with women's health, a vaccine for cervical cancer. Tonight, what many are calling a triumph in science and medicine and a huge turning point in women's health. A vaccine to prevent cervical cancer was approved for use today by the FDA. With us tonight, NBC News Chief Science Correspondent Robert Bazell. Bob, set the stakes for us first.
Well, cervical cancer has been reduced substantially in the United States because of the Pap test. But in this country, there's still 11,000 cases a year and 3,500 deaths. Worldwide, 290,000 women a year die from cervical cancer, the biggest killer of young women after AIDS. And this vaccine could reduce those numbers by 70%.
And Bob, how is it it's a vaccine to prevent cancer?
Well, cervical cancer is one of the few cancers that are caused by a virus. In this case, it's called HPV, and it's easily transmitted sexually. So easily that about 50% of the American population is infected. The vaccine prevents the infection, so it prevents the cancer. It's as simple as that, but it's a major scientific triumph.
A big day in women's medicine. Bob Bazell, thank you for being with us with the story tonight. The Senate today voted down an effort to abolish the estate tax, sometimes called the death tax, on inherited wealth. President Bush has already cut it, but those cuts are due to expire in 5 years. The vote today fell 3 senators short. Majority Leader Frist, who calls the tax unfair, says the Senate will vote on it again this year. Democrats said they'll oppose it again as a budget-busting giveaway to the wealthiest Americans. On Wall Street today, stocks plunged early in the day. The Dow was down more than 174 at midday. Then the buyers stepped in. The markets finished narrowly mixed. Blue chips ended the day up just under 8. NASDAQ was down 6.5 on the day. We'll take a break. When we come back, when the local employer is the military, what life is like in high school with so many parents serving so far away. In many ways, Killeen, Texas is the ultimate company town. The company happens to be the U.S. Army. Fort Hood, Texas, home of 3 Corps, the 4th Infantry, and the 1st Cav. The military is part of the fabric of so many lives there. It's very visible at the local high school, where the students study away for finals while so many parents are away in the fight. On this day when the military is so much a part of our thoughts, the story tonight from NBC's Don Teague.
Take 2 steps through the front entrance of Shoemaker High School in Killeen, Texas, and the price of war becomes impossible to ignore. 7 gold stars hang above the doors, honoring 7 parents killed in Iraq.
It's really hard to buy the gold ones because you know they're not coming back.
Guidance counselor Barbara Critchfield has been hanging stars since the Iraq War began, blue or silver for each parent in combat.
We've got at least 2,000 that are up throughout the building.
For some families, there's a star for both parents.
1, 2, 3.
Sergeant Corinne Ganasius is back from Iraq. Her husband is there now. Their children worry about those stars.
You never know when you lose a parent. You never know if they're not going to come back.
For most teenagers, simply going to high school is stressful enough, but imagine going to a school where almost 90% of the students have parents in the military, and many of those parents are fighting overseas.
Be mindful of the requirements.
Teachers say the stress leads to falling grades and disciplinary problems. And even though most parents do return, there are the 7 gold stars for those who haven't.
I am very proud of my dad.
Megan Nellam's dad was killed by a roadside bomb in Baghdad. He told her not to cry if he died, that he was doing something important. So is she.
He wanted me to keep on going to school, so the next day I went to school because I know my dad wouldn't want me to miss my education.
Learning under a shadow of war in a school brightened by shining stars. Don Teague, NBC News, Killeen, Texas.
That's our broadcast for this busy Thursday. Thank you for being with us. I'm Brian Williams. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow night. Good night.